What's up, y'all? Welcome back to the Friends and Strangers podcast. Go by the name of LAVA The FreshNerd. This episode was super dope, super powerful, super insightful. A lot of real talk, a lot of jewels were passed, especially for those that might be in between their faith or just trying to get some new knowledge on it. I had an awesome therapist on by the name of Terra Shapae or Tara Barley, depending on how you know her. We dive into everything, to how she got her start, her inspirations of how she became a therapist, her journey, spoke about her faith as well. So tune in and enjoy. Peace. Yeah, we can get started. Welcome to the Friends and Strangers podcast. I go by the name of LAVA The FreshNerd, as you know. You also know me as Steve. But my goal kind of is, I feel like, and when it was given to me, it was like friends and strangers, what separates the two? And typically, sometimes it's just a conversation. Sometimes it's just a question. And going into this year, kind of the goal was kind of just to bring the two closer. I know a lot of dope people. I have a ton of great friends and a nice circle around me, but there's also a lot of people that are doing amazing things that I don't know. So this podcast is kind of a bridge between the two. I'm plan on having a ton of my friends on, but also in the journey, hope to meet some strangers that I can bring on that I didn't know, and equally is awesome. So the way I start these off is I have two questions, and the first one is, who is one stranger that you would say you're proud of or inspired by?
Man, you coming out the gate swinging.
Yeah.
Who is one stranger that I am proud of or I'm inspired by? I guess there's so many. It's not something the way that I can think off the top of my head. But oddly enough, the person that fell in my spirit, and I don't even know why, because I think that they're not that she's not dope, but I feel like there's so many other people that later I'll be like, oh, this person, that person, was Vanessa Bryant.
Oh, wow. My wife was just talking about her.
Yeah, she is handling the situation with such grace and such humility. I just, I can't follow her on social media. First of all, I never did. But people that know me know that I'm a huge basketball and football fan.
Okay.
And so Kobe, I always was just had this odd relationship with him. Kobe is our era. It was Michael, then Kobe, right? So I literally I didn't watch any of the services or anything like that. My people that know me from know me called me and was like, "Are you okay?" Me and him was friends or something. Because we know that deep down that was your dude or whatever. But I didn't I wasn't one of those, how some people you follow their life and all this other kind of stuff. That wasn't my thing with him. It was man, basketball. So I had never really paid too much attention to that part of his life until probably the last year before he passed away. So I'm just saying all to say I don't know much about the lady at all, really. But I just have been paying attention to how she's just been navigating this whole situation. And it is such grace and strength and humility to have to lose your husband and your child at the same time. I know that people go through those experiences every day, but to be able to do it, you're in a public eye. And then not only is she in the public eye, but she still has 3 children, but then 2 very young children.
Yeah.
And to watch her still be able to celebrate his legacy and build, but have her children to have a sense of normalcy. And it seems like she has a great support system, and that is always what we need. But even in the holidays, you just seeing her give into her friends and stuff like that, watching her through this process, I think really just gave me a sense of I'd joy in being proud of somebody that you don't even know during this time. And so that is somebody that I don't know, but honestly, I've been watching her and just how she's navigated this whole process and just her integrity and grace in the whole thing. Yeah, she is just super amazing. And so, yeah, I definitely like pray for them and their whole family, because they're just inspirational to me, just to watch how she's navigating this whole process. And she's grieving the way that I encourage people to grieve. Like, you're going to have real low days, but to celebrate the legacy, that is part of what helps people to heal. And so to watch her in that process is just really encouraging. So, yeah.
No.
Okay. Because I turned down my computer a little bit. So
perfect. Yeah.
Okay.
No, you sound good.
Okay.
Okay. So I can probably edit that part out. The pause.
Okay.
But the second question is, who is one friend that you would say you're proud of or inspires you?
Who is one friend? Okay. So I have a lot of friends that do a lot of amazing things. I have friends that are out here as doctors in the pandemic, people that raise their families. Like, I just have teachers, just a bunch of people that do amazing things. But my one friend that I'm proud of right now, I'm proud of her because she is challenging the status quo. And she, I don't know. I don't want to tell all her business. So I'm trying to figure out how to navigate this. But, she grew up Catholic. Not that that matters. She is now a Christian. Okay. And she's just navigating that world of shifting from one ideology and doctrine into another. But that's not why I'm proud of her. That just gives us a little background. So that's one challenge that she's navigating. But she is standing up for justice, right? So she grew up in this very upper middle class, suburban, she from Webster. So, Webster is where everybody want to be, like that type lifestyle. And her and I met and just kind of blended and just was like, you're like a mirror of me. Like we just, you know what I mean? Those people that you meet and you're like, oh, like you're supposed to be in my world, you know?
Yeah.
And so there's many things that she didn't know until she met me. And I kind of always grew up in a world that was very diverse. So it's not a challenge for me to be with friends with anybody. It's not a struggle. I navigate those worlds very easily. But I say that to say, Black people, but it's different when they are integrated into your life. And her and I have been friends for a very long time, but I have watched her just grow in her understanding. We've had hard conversations. We've had challenging conversations. She can ask me anything. I can ask her anything. But just where we are right now in this world, she has been combated with everything. And just to see somebody that can stand up and say, oh, there's places in my life that I am privileged. There are places in my life that I'm overly sensitive, offended, and fragile. Let me see the world outside of myself.
Wow.
And then you're challenged by every other thing around you, even your friends and family that don't understand the system that you're trying to come up against because they're not used to it. And so just to see her shift and to see her push and her grace, even in those situations, it's amazing to me because there's a lot of people in this world that I'm even close to that's not doing that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So to see her strength and her push to try to be the difference, she would be that person.
Okay. You want to give her name?
Her name's Sarah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Shout out to Sarah. Send her my way. I would love to have that convo.
Okay, I will.
So I kind of do it intentionally. I didn't realize it at first when I first started this, but now kind of let the world know who you are. And if you want, you can kind of give us who you are at the beginning and your path to where you are today.
Okay. Well, just know I'm long-winded, so tell me, hey, pause at any point.
I tell everybody. I seem like everybody that I asked said the same thing. So that's the reason why I chose to do a podcast, because we got the freedom and
just to say whatever.
So please go. Okay. I believe what you have to say is powerful.
Okay. So I am Tara Barley. I am Well, I have a master's in mental health and community counseling from the University of Rochester. Shout out to the University of Rochester. I currently work in community mental health. I am super passionate about helping individuals uproot trauma, to learn who they are, their identity, to just navigate their everyday world in a sense of authenticity and wholeness. But I'm also like, how can I say this? Like, I deal with people from all different backgrounds. So I want to say that all my clients are not Christians. I want to say that. And we navigate whatever world view you come from. So that's not an issue. But to me, it's super important that Christians really solidify not only their identity in Christ, but they understand that Jesus and therapy go hand in hand, right?
Yeah.
And so just to understand that it is okay from the Christian worldview and perspective for them to understand that they need help, and to understand that, you know, God has given me this wisdom and this insight to navigate this world to help them grow stronger in their identity in it. Likewise, my thesis from school had to do with just African Americans at the time and their religion and spirituality and integrating the two together. It showed in the research that I did that they have better outcomes when it is integrated into counseling, for a number of reasons, but that is a whole different podcast.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that is part of it. And just to really deal with trauma, I think, and helping people to resolve their issues. We don't really realize that we mature at our last phase of trauma. So, you know, when people have this very traumatic experience younger in life, and you're like, you're 40, but you acted 12. That's right, because they are stuck in that 12-year-old part of their life. And anytime something comes in and triggers that place of brokenness or hurt or whatever, then they revert back to that place, that last place that they had, you know, that incident, their last pain point. And so to me, I just really want to help people to be able to navigate where they are right now by healing their past and then thrusting them into their future. So yeah, that's basically the essence of who I am, I guess.
Okay.
I have went to private school my whole entire life.
Okay.
So I think that has given me a very different view than certain people, because I've lived in multiple spaces. And in terms of, worlds, not necessarily I haven't lived in multiple cities or anything like that. But I've gotten to see the world from being, I don't like the words minority and majority, but for this context, I'll use it. I've been a majority in certain situations, and I've been a minority in others. And so I think that you learn a lot of lessons in that, in terms of just your overall identity. And that comes through with the people that I guess I interact with, or that I meet on a daily basis.
Yeah.
And I got here in terms of therapy. I have always been able to really talk to people and get to the root of what's going on. I've always been able to sense when something isn't right, when they needed to talk about something. And, you know, I don't say this from a haughty place, but I'm pretty wise. And I've been that little kid that the grownups are like, have you been here before? Like, don't just say that. So I think it was always in me. But when I had went to undergrad, I was in psychology program, and that was a whole lot there, because I went to a school where I was like an RA, and there was so much that you don't realize when you're in that role that comes up that you have to deal with your residents and stuff like that. It's a lot of responsibility. And then we had some racial things happen at our school. And by the time I got done, I was just like, I don't want to be Rosa Parks, and I don't want to listen to nobody problems. I want to be a regular person. So, because initially, I wanted to go to HBU. I always wanted to go to Spelman. But then I was like, the world isn't like that. I just felt a real sense that God was sending me to a place that was not just, you know, my people and understanding. I think they're great. I kind of go back and forth, should I have went there? But I think he was sending me into a world where I had to go through those experiences, because it gives me language for who he has called for me to be later. And there's just a lot of stuff that happened there. And by the end of that experience, I was done with it all. Like I didn't want to talk to people. I was good. So I basically, the reason why that is relevant is I had graduated from undergrad and I was said I was going to go to school for pharmacy. And so I like took classes that I didn't take in undergrad for pharmacy, and I was getting ready to apply for pharmacy school and all those things. And there was just like a lot of shifts. I was like, do I want to do this? Is this like my purpose? Am I passionate about this, or will I just make a lot of money? Right. And I liked all the information because I like data, like I like learning of all this stuff. And I still really like pharmacy, but it wasn't something that I was called to do. And long story short, I ended up working for the University of Rochester, and they had a pharmacy that deals with people that had like severe mental illnesses. And it was really like a collaborative care setting that allowed for them to have groups and all these resources, their medical things, everything in one setting for a population of people that are not that compliant. And when I was there, it's kind of when my passion came back for what I was doing. Because there was sometimes that people would come and talk to me about their, client, because they won't talk to them, but they've told me their whole life, or I know something that they didn't know, or do you know where this person is? And just talking to them and realizing that there was a part of individuals that have mental illnesses that we don't always treat them like human beings. The fact that somebody was asking them how their day was and talking to them with a sense of normalcy and building that relationship, I just saw how much that was needed, especially for people that were going through some of the most challenging times of their life. And I was able to do it effortlessly. And so it just really gave me a heart for that population of people. And so it turned me back around, long story short. And that's kind of how I got back on this journey.
That was amazing. So I kind of want to go to your childhood for a second, just because hindsight is always 20/20. Can you look back and see, like, I still think there's a lot of mystery behind therapists and therapy and just the concept of it all. So one thing that comes to my mind just randomly is like, well, do therapists go through something crazy to make them realize that they want to be a therapist? Or do they come from traditionally great childhoods to make sure that they are like kind of, I'm sure you had sprinklings of things that kind of hinted you to what you are today. Can you look back and see some of those things?
Yeah, so I honestly can't say, in the grand scheme of things that I had like a horrible childhood, you know what I mean? Like that would be a lie. I have a mother, I have a father, and though they're not married, like they provided for me. I had amazing grandparents. I went to, private school all my life. You know what I mean? And so even though we may not have had everything we wanted financially, there was a lot of things that I consistently had that many people that in my community may not have had those same experiences or opportunities. But, I think what really started happening for me is that I realized that there was pieces of not just me or other people that were broken, or you weren't really living out your true self. And it kind of made me try to figure out why. And in hindsight, like looking back, I think that although my education, I can look, there were so many people that like encouraged me, and, I wouldn't be who I am now if I didn't go to those schools. And, there were certain teachers that like I honor, like they really saw something in me that I didn't necessarily even see in myself. But I think one of the biggest challenges of being in that environment is being a lot of times the only minority student. And so I personally didn't always see it because I wasn't necessarily raised like that. You know what I mean? So I didn't necessarily always see it until I got older and I saw fractures from being in those roles and the narratives that were spoken to me and over me. And so I think that kind of shifted stuff. Then for me to be the bright individual, not saying that they're not bright people in our community, I'm just talking about stereotypically, that comes from, the private school and everything like that, and go back into your world and just kind of, just kind of what it is like to be in that situation. Yeah. I think it's also challenging because there's just this false war that has been created in our community that if you act a certain way, then you're not one of us. And, we drank the Kool-Aid, right? We believe the lie that we can't be a diverse group of people because that's what we have kind of been taught. And that's what we have took on that identity. So I think for me, there was a lot of pockets, like little things that came up. Like I said, my parents, they have, they always provide and stuff. But the way that my mind works, I see the deficit. So like I see the good, but I'm like, oh, this is what it's like to be a child from a single mother. Like the weight of that, you know what I mean? Oh, this is what it's like when your father has multiple children, the weight of that, and I think really what kind of probably led me to this journey is that I wanted to be able to celebrate all those things, but there was patterns that I wasn't taking with me to the future. You know what I mean? So there was things that I was like, this was great. I appreciate it. This is why I am the way that I am. However, I will take the beauty of what this situation created. I will take every good thing that was deposited in me, but anything that was negative or trying or hard, that can't be a part of my legacy. I'm not passing that on to my children. I'm not carrying that weight with me. So really, besides like wanting to like help the people that I felt like nobody wanted to help, that's kind of what it is. And that's kind of like one of the challenges that I deal with, knowing that I'm supposed to create something else. But it's like, if I leave these community mental health settings, what happens to those people? But that's another thing. So like, I'm thinking about how all this stuff is going to come together. But what happened for me in grad school, I wasn't in grad school to get more knowledge, kind of. It really was a self-exploration journey. And there was a journey of like healing. It was a journey of depositing stuff. It was a journey of like eradicating things. And so really all of that that particular journey and what that was a value that I really got from my program. And it was like the relationships that I even developed with like some of the professors. And it really kind of had me to self-reflect, to look at my own dysfunction and to be like, yeah, you're great, but you also got some issues, homie. So deal with your mess, right? Yeah. And so I think that those are real reasons why I wanted to be a therapist. And I never really knew. You navigate the world and you don't really know what's there until you do. And so, I can't necessarily pinpoint one thing. I think it kind of was like, I'm good at this. And there was a lot of other stuff that I was good at, but I think I was frightened in a way of my own shadow. Like it was easier for me to play the background. Gotcha. So at one point it was like, I could be a lawyer, and I kind of wanted to be one. But then at the end of the day, it was like, I don't know if I want to really do that and be in a courtroom. Like, so I think that was kind of always me, that it's easier for me just to kind of go in the back, but that also is a part of a story. Right. So yeah.
Yeah. You mentioned a couple things. One is that being the only minority in a lot of the rooms you were in, I can relate to that just because of the things that I've always dwelled in as a child wasn't typically what my environment dwelled in. The nerdy stuff, random. But when I jumped into the workforce, I typically was always the only minority. Same thing when I got into college. And the reason I bring that up is I remember it kind of being a badge of honor for me, being prideful, but in hindsight, looking back, that's a pain that should be there. Like, why am I the only one there? And I wanted to just get your thoughts on not specifically that badge of honor, but how we as a people take things and celebrate them. For example, you see all the time on social media, I just cut so and so off, or I'm blocking a ton of people. How do we shift that thinking of, in a sense, I guess it's us just making lemons out of lemonade. I'm the only Black person in this, so I should celebrate it. I have to cut a ton of people off just because it seems cool. And there's a million more, but how do we begin to shift those things or those thinkings?
Yeah, I think they're kind of two separate things, even though they may have the same root, kind of. So to go back to being in school and it being the badge of honor, I understand that part too. That's why like every comment and question has like a million little pieces, even though you may only talk about one piece. You know what I mean? So let me just put that out there. If you ask me it from a different angle, or if we had hours, I could give you the very, just diverse answer to all these questions. So none of these things are just like very linear. They all have a lot of components.
And I mean, that's part of us being only in the room. You kind of got to be able to speak 90 different languages to get the point across.
Right, exactly. And, I felt that way too. And in a way that was instilled in me. Like my parents, my mom especially, instilled in me that when you go into this space, you have to be the best. You have to be the smartest. You have to have a self-worth, because if you do not, they will try to tear you down. And not even as a sense of like being racist. She is speaking the truth. There's a lot of experiences that I had that were just that, a mirror of that. And as a kid, you don't always know that that's what's happening or that's what's going on. Like, there were experiences. I remember the first time when I realized I was Black at 2 times in school. One, when I thought I was going to homegirl house to spend a night and that didn't work out. My mom was like, stop asking those white people to go to there. And I was like, wait, what is happening here? Like I'm 5 or 6 or however. I was confused. I might have been older. I think I was in 6th grade, but that's another story. And then, in college, when we had all these things happen. So I'm just saying that to say there's a part of you that has to have that sense of pride in who you are, because the world's going to tell you that who you are isn't worth it. And so you have to know who you are. And that's just not being Black. That's being a male. That's being a woman. That's being the only one that is sent to a certain job atmosphere and they didn't see anyone like you and you're different. And so when you go into that space, you have to know who you are. And so that is something that cultivates that aspect of pride. I think that where it can kind of get like wonky is that when your identity is solidified in that and just that. Where if that isn't there, you're nothing. That your worth and your value is in this thing. And so for me, I had to separate being the smartest only African American in those spaces, in those rooms. It's not challenging for me to go into rooms with everybody else not like me. Like I can go into a room with a ton of white people and I know I'm Black, but I don't care. Like, because I've grew up like that. And we communicate easily. Where I can, and that's why I call myself like the Black girl exception. Like I did a whole speech on it on college when we were supposed to talk about racial issues. I'm the exception. Like, I'm not the person that has the challenge going into these situations. And I think that is okay. You know what I mean? Because that's part of who I am. So I'm saying all that to say being proud of being that individual is not necessarily bad, but it's just when your identity and everything that who you are is only rooted in that one aspect. Because if something were to change, then, and if your worth and your value is in that thing, that's when people are broken. That's when they have like these existential midlife crisis and all that stuff, because they put all their value into something that is wasting away.
Wow.
That's that part. And then us as a people, I think that I don't necessarily know if it's just Black people. I just in terms of our community though, it's almost as if we have been taught that we can't get above like this bar. And And so when we see individuals get above this bar, we believe that, oh, they got there, but that doesn't mean that I can. And there's a lot of factors there. I think that some of that stuff is representative of the contexts that we're in. Some of it has to do with classism and socialism. And, some of it has to do with wages and neighborhoods and all of that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Those are the very real factors. But one thing that I had learned through research and learning about urban communities and all that stuff, because, you have to do some of that stuff in school.
Yeah.
Some of the classes that I took really kind of reinforced things that I thought, but then it gave me the actual, I guess, education behind my thoughts, if that makes sense. But anyway, is that when you provide someone with an alternate understanding, when you show them something different, and when they choose to take on that identity instead of the one that they're kind of stuck in, then they can have a different understanding, right? And so it's kind of in terms of the things that you were talking about in our community and cutting people off and all of those things. The idea to me would be not that you're cutting people off, because I think that in life we have to reevaluate ourselves and our relationships constantly. Some people are seasonal. That's not good, bad, or whatever. They are in your life for a certain season. Some people go in a journey with you for your lifetime. It's important to know the difference. However, in terms of I'm cutting people off this year, and I see people block season, all this.
Yeah.
Why do you have to do that every year?
Right.
To me, that's the bigger question.
Right.
And I don't necessarily think that is community-based. I think that it is people-based, that we're not choosing to really get to the heart of what's happening here. Because if you have to go through your friends list every single year and get rid of everybody, then are you choosing the right friends?
Got you. Alrighty. So I'll be remiss if I wouldn't go. Your hoodie says Jesus in therapy.
Yeah.
So it seems that faith is a huge part of who you are.
Yes.
Can you speak to maybe the time period or the moment where you realized, in a sense, who he was and when that became such a part of you?
Yeah. So I feel like I had different experiences throughout life. So in my house, I always knew Jesus was God's son, and I always grew up like that. We didn't always go to church, but I knew that. And I will give always honor to the Catholic school system, because I always went to Catholic schools up until I was in high school. So they taught me a lot about just the honor and the reverence of God that I don't think that I would have learned outside of that. So that was learned in the Catholic school system. I learned ideas and stuff in the Bible in the Catholic school system. But then when I was probably about 15, my mom got saved and started going to church. Oh, and going back, my family, especially on my dad's side, there are a lot of pastors and preachers and all that stuff. But it's a difference, I think, than there's a difference between being in a religion and knowing how to participate in activities and all that stuff than having relationships. And so for me personally, once my mom got saved, that's kind of when I went on that journey with the church that I attended. And it was all of a sudden, there was just a relationship that was being cultivated that I kind of didn't understand, but it started to mean a lot to me on a personal level. And then, so I think that those are, two different points in time.
Yeah.
And then, you go to college, you have life, you dealing with your identity, all that stuff. And, it is what it is. I call those the lost years.
Yeah.
A lot of stuff happens.
So because I don't know the feeling of necessarily having that through college. So what was that like?
It was challenging because I went to college when I was 17.
Yeah, same here.
Yeah, you know, so you're young, and I didn't realize kind of how sheltered I was, because I wouldn't have thought I was sheltered. Like, you know, I grew up in the hood, like you know what I mean. Even though my grandparents lived in the suburbs, like I grew up in the hood. I might have didn't do everything, but like I didn't think I was as sheltered until I went to college in Philadelphia, and I was like, "Holy crap, what is this?" I hadn't even necessarily even been around that many Black people in one setting, like in terms of school. Like I had never, like we had Black kids in our school, and I went to an all-girl high school. So that was another shift, you know, 4 years of being around only girls, and then you go into this college setting, and then there's a lot more people that look like me, even though there wasn't a ton of us.
Yeah.
It had a lot of challenges that like I never had foreseen. And, you know, a lot of the stuff that we deal with in our community, like in terms of like competition and stuff, all of that things that are kind of like fostered so that we can have this infighting and hate that we just don't seem to like get or want to stop. Like I had to encounter those things that like I never had to like encounter on that magnitude and that scale. So that was interesting in terms of college. Also, when I went to college, I was just like, you know, sold out for Jesus, like in my room, like in my own little world at first. And I would say that at some point, that whole environment becomes a little like, it shifts when you're there and you get new experiences and you learn new things and your pastor's not there and your church isn't there and everything like that. So it was just like very interesting, I would say, for the least, being in that environment, in that world. I learned a whole lot about myself. I found probably like 100 versions of myself.
Wow.
In that process, I would say. So it was very, very interesting. You know, it's interesting, you know, you go, you party or whatever, but then you got to walk home. And so I'm the person that just left the party, but I'm speaking in tongues as I'm going back to my, my apartment, asking God to cover me because I'm in a back alley walking back to my apartment. The nonsense that we go through. So anyways, I would say like in college, I was in between two worlds for a long time. And when I came home, I think it was a lot of me trying to figure out who am I and what am I going to do with what God has put inside of me? What did I think that relationship looked like? But I would say that probably it wasn't that long ago, honestly, when God and I had like real encounters and I really surrendered, I guess. Because to me, it was always kind of a control thing a little bit too, because it's like, if you do this, what does that mean? And what am I going to have to agree to? So when I really let go, that's when that relationship really began to develop. When I said, I'm not going to be in control of this anymore.
Funny how that works, right?
Funny, right?
All right. So I did a little research, which is always weird when you try to research your friends. So I found this, and I would love for you to expound on it because I know what it is, and I've been blessed to be a part of it. But here it goes. It's Terras Childhood.
Yeah, Shapae.
Terras Childhood, heart mender, daughter, bridge builder, therapist, mentor, investor, light bearer. I redefine narratives. I cultivate hope. I deconstruct trauma. I foster authenticity.
So which part? I feel like I'm talking. Well, you tell me which part and I'll expound upon it.
Well, let's start with Terra Shapae.
Okay. So Shapae is my middle name. And I didn't used to like it when I was younger. I used to say, I don't even know. I used to say my middle name was other stuff when kids asked me in school. Because, you know, their names like Judy and Marie and I'm Shapae. Right. So I used to come up with all of this other stuff. So a part of me using my middle name was really me embracing the fullness of my identity, truth be told. And so I was like, you need to love every aspect of you.
Come on now.
You know, and so that's why I started using it. And then also, you know, clients can get a little weird. So I didn't want them to have easy access to me. Cause I've had some weird stuff happen, not just with clients, with people. So I just was like, let me like remix it a little bit. But that's where the Shapae came from, was me embracing the fullness of who I am.
All right, let's go heartmender.
To me, what I do is I mend broken hearts.
That you do?
Yeah, and so it can be brokenness from anything. It can be brokenness from your childhood. It can be brokenness in your marriage and your relationships. It can be brokenness in terms of how you view yourself. But that is what I am called to do. Like, one of the things I will have conversations with God is like, how am I going to do this? What does this look like? And he literally sent me to the scripture in Isaiah that says that you're called to mend the brokenhearted. And to me, just the weight of that number one, that he would even trust me. Like, now this makes me emotional, and I'm not even emotional, but like the fact that he will even trust me with people, like I don't take that lightly. Like the responsibility to hold somebody's heart in your hand and to do it responsibly. Like that's another reason why I feel like the therapy part was so important for me to go through that journey in school, because you don't want to transfer your hurt or your pain on anyone else. And that's really one of the reasons why I was so invested in that program, because we break people all the time with our words, our actions, and it's not always intentional. It's because of things that we haven't resolved in ourselves. And so I knew that there was some things, and I didn't know what they were. That was the challenge of it all. Like I didn't know what they were, but it was like at one point I looked in the mirror and I was just like, God, there is something here and I don't see it, but I need to resolve it, because I can't go forward like this. You know, everybody sees you and they see this bright, this beautiful thing, and on the inside, you know, there's this war and you don't know what it is. And so I just feel like mending hearts is so crucial, because there's so many things, like even that we see in the world, that we see it as a reflection of hate, and sometimes it is, but it's just brokenness that people didn't deal with. And so that's why it's important to me to be able to help people to really deal with their pain, and try to resolve it in order for them to be. That's where it comes. I bridge authenticity, for you to be the most authentic person, the most authentic version of yourself. Like, you know, I'll have people say like, you know, this person, I know them. Well, how do you know them? They don't know them. Like they just figuring out who they are. You know what I mean? So like if anybody was like, I knew you back then, great. Stay with her unless you want to know me, because I didn't even fully know who I was back then.
I don't even live there no more.
Yeah, exactly. So I just try through, you know, certain things, try to help people to be that most authentic version of themselves.
Light bearer.
I bear the light of Christ in me, on the outside of me. That is one of my daily prayers. I would say is like, you know, when I really like have that time with God before I do something, is allow his light to shine on the inside of me, for people that don't know him can know him through me. And that doesn't mean that I go up to people all the time and just be like, Jesus said this, Jesus did this. It's regular conversations and interactions. That's how I realized, you know, going back to when I was working at the mental health like pharmacy thingy in Rochester, there would be those clients would come up to me all the time and be like, are you a Christian? And I'd be like, how do they know? Like, when you talk about God, I ain't saying nothing. And they just like, I could tell. And that's when God really started to talk to me about your very being, who you are on the inside, who I created you to be. That light shines, and other people are able to see that light when you are a representation of who I called you to be. And so my job is to shine his light in every dark place that he's called me to. So
I want to get into, I redefine narratives, but I have to go on. First of all, you're a woman. And you're a Christian woman. So I'm thinking of the little girl or the woman that's listening to this that may be struggling with, because as Christians, we sometimes say things that are culturally to us that we assume the rest of the world or even other Christians may just know. So when you refer to him speaking to you, some people may think that that may be audibly. Can you kind of, in your life, because I know it's different for everybody, but some of those moments where he's communicated with you, can you expound on how, and maybe if someone's struggling with communicating with God, kind of the different ways that he may communicate with them? Because I think people assume that he's just going to say, hey, you, with a strong, loud voice.
Terra,
and you're going to be like, hey, oh, this is how God speaks. So
I you know, he speaks in a number of ways. And I'd say in terms of that particular situation, it may have been audible, but it was in my voice. Sometimes I hear him in like voices that are familiar to me that like that I've heard before, but the language or what he is saying is very intentional, because maybe it's something that I'm not thinking about. Maybe it's something that I haven't fully expressed. And then there will be a language that starts to communicate with me, but it's not like Terra, do this, or anything like that. He speaks to me in dreams. A lot of times people, they discount their dreams. And I'm not saying that every dream is from God, because they're not. There's our flesh, we have dreams. There's dreams that are divinely given to us. And the enemy, our adversary, the devil, also gives us dreams as well. And that's another topic of conversation, but we do have to sift through that to figure out where that data is coming from. But he talks to me in dreams and through other people. So there's times that other people will come and communicate something to me or have a conversation to me about something that I've only been speaking to God about, or I've been thinking about or trying to process. And so to me, that's what I would say confirmation. So once God speaks to me about something and I'm trying to process it, somebody else comes to me, he will confirm it not once, but twice. Normally somebody else will come after that, or I'll see something on TV, or I'll be driving and there's a sign. We have to realize that he is the creator of the universe, the great I am, right? And so in that he can communicate with us through anything. Like there has been times where I've been thinking, should I be here? And I will get there. And I literally was in a place and I'm wondering, do I go there? Is this the place, one of the places that you sent me? This whole thing where I'm having communications and trying to pull out my frustration, my anxiety, all of those things about doing something that's new and challenging. And then I've literally went somewhere and the street sign has my name on it. Barley. You know what I mean? So I'm like, Barley, wait a minute. I've never seen my name on a street sign of the very place that I'm asking, am I supposed to be? So he talks to us in all kind of ways. We're just not always intentional about paying attention. We're so consumed with everything that we're not present, but he's always speaking. The word says that he even speaks to us in a still small voice. It's not always going to be this loud thing. So we have to cultivate an environment that we're able to receive the information that he gives us, because it's all over. It's in movies. If he's the creator of everything, then I expect him to speak through everything.
Come on,
so I just have to be paying attention to what it is that he's saying to me at that time.
Yeah, that's awesome. That was so awesome. If you're listening, just pay attention. Like, for example, quick story. When I started running last summer, one of the paths, like my main path that I would run, pretty much every time I would run it, I would see a red cardinal. And then this red cardinal is another, but I would see this red cardinal every time when I was running, I would see two of them. And I was praying, communicating with God, and he let me know that that's his presence every time I'm running. That's just a reminder that he's there. So a friend of mine, probably a couple months ago, was like, hey, Steve, man, I'm struggling with, I'm not hearing from God. I don't think he hear me, so on and so forth. So I told him the same. I'm like, hey, man, you got to kind of just pay attention to, like, be present. It's a lot of things that you receive information wise that you may not realize. For example, I told him the bird story. So he calls me about a week later and him and his wife, they're like, we just seen this red cardinal. Super excited. It was like, it was a ton of birds, and we seen one red cardinal, and he looked at us and then he flew away. Super excited. I haven't seen that red cardinal since.
Yeah.
Right. But walking into work one day, he just seen a ton of crosses everywhere, and he just was like, "I'm always with you, don't worry," type thing. But I said that to say, people, just be present, be aware of your surroundings. I know it may seem tricky, especially for new people that are looking to get a deeper relationship with God. Just look for the little small things, because he is there talking.
Yeah.
But so now I want to get to I redefine.
Can I say something about that real quick?
Go ahead.
Okay. And I just want to encourage people as well to know that it's not for an elect few, so
come on.
There's definitely like this idea that like, oh, he only speaks to prophets, or he only speaks to pastors or leaders or whatever you may have been taught. That's not accurate, or whatever you may think that's not accurate. When Jesus said, basically, and I'm paraphrasing to all of the religious people, but when he said basically that when he left us, that there was going to be someone greater that was going to be here. That's the Holy Spirit, and the Holy Spirit dwells on the inside of you. When you're like, oh, something just told me to do that. Oh, this is just my conscience, or, or whatever worldly thing we may think it is, that's literally the Holy Spirit, like saying, wait, no, go do this, even when that conviction falls on you, like, girl, should you really? Like, that is the Holy Spirit that dwells on the inside of you. And so he is everywhere. God is everywhere. And so with the Holy Spirit dwelling on the inside of you, and with you having that direct communication and access to God, yes, he places people in our lives as mentors and counselors and leaders and all of those things to give us the insight and wisdom that we may not have of a situation. But you should always be able to communicate with him yourself and to go to him first, because he wants that intimacy and that direct communication with you. So I would just tell people, talk to God the way that you talk to your friend. Like the way that I'm talking right now to Steve is the way I talk to God, like literally. And sometimes I have to catch myself, be like, girl, don't get too familiar with him, because I'd be like, nah, I'm not oh God, I am sorry. Like, let me pull back. You know what I mean? Because he is my father and my friend. And so, I just wanted to say that, because sometimes people can think that like, I don't have what it takes, or I don't have that on the inside of me. And the love of the Father is for us all, right? And that relationship is everything. And so don't get caught up in the hype. Just talk to him.
Yeah, I felt that. So you are a woman, and you're a Black woman, and I have to ask, what has it been like maneuvering through your many facets, specifically your therapy, but also as a Christian woman, because that's a stigma of its own. Some challenges that you might have faced, and again, in hopes to, if that woman's listening, you might be able to give them some insight or something.
Yeah. So, in terms of, the field that I'm in, a lot of times you see a lot of women in this field. And I just think that has something to do with toxic masculinity, not necessarily that women are better at this field than men. That's a different subject. But it's a whole different.
I bet it has a lot to do with emotional intelligence.
Yeah, it does. But in terms of being, let's start off with being a Black woman. So, I have been in sessions with people that I know look at me and they're like, oh, because that was me at work too. Before I actually was a therapist, I would communicate with them on the phone. And so when I communicate with them and I'm in my professional voice that, all of our parents taught us African Americans how to have,
What is it called? Code switching now? They call it?
That's what they call it now, code switching. But, you're taught to present yourself a certain way, right? And it's just natural. So I don't necessarily think that's a good or a bad thing. You need to be able to navigate the environments that you go in, honestly. But within authenticity, though, I will put that out there again. So I am used to people seeing me, not knowing that it was me.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Oh, so you're the one that I've been talking to this whole time. Oh, you're the one that was able to do this for me. That's normal.
Yeah, my name's Steven.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Exactly. And so there's this whole part of it where people don't really know that I am the person on the other side of that. In therapy, I've had clients who initially come into a room and they're thrown off because they're getting ready to sit down with a female Black therapist.
Wow.
And so that is challenging within itself. And, one of the experiences happened when I was in grad school, and I had a mentor, an advisor in grad school that he saw something in me that I didn't even see in myself. I remember he was Episcopal priest, and he was a professor at our school, and I love him. But he would talk to me in real religious terms. Like he would tell me, when you're overwhelmed and you can't function, you're not talking to God enough. So he's like, I don't care that you got 5 papers. Have you sat with God? Like, that's how he would deal with me.
Wow.
And so he even told me the therapy thing is great, but you can't run from your call. At that time, I didn't know what this man was talking about. He was like, you can't run from it. But the reason why that was so helpful in navigating these situations is that one of the things that I was taught in that program, and even within him, is the fact that I am who I am, and I'm entering into a space, and everything that I carry goes into that space with me. And so the challenge with many therapists or people is that they feel a level of resistance or pushback, and then they stop. Like, I don't have to do that, or I don't want to confront that, or I shouldn't have to. Well, in certain spaces, if you're not willing to have the conversation and do it in a place of not being offended or prideful, but do it with a level of grace, you're never going to be able to really penetrate that same system that you're complaining about, right? And so when you have these therapy sessions and when people look at me, my thing of it is that I know, again, I'm not trying to be prideful, but I know I'm dope. So I'm like, I know that if you sit with me and get, over this side of me, I never used to wear my hair in braids, and there's a lot of reasons why, but in corporate settings or professional settings, it's how am I going to be received? But now I'm like, yo, I'm Black,
Facts.
I'm gonna be me.
Wakanda.
Yeah, Wakanda forever. I'm about to be me, And so, enter into those spaces, I have to really let them know that once you get past this exterior, then the work can happen. And so I got to deal with my own issues, because I can't be offended that this person may have never encountered a Black person on this level. We think the world is very integrated, but it's not.
It's not.
It's not,
It's really not.
No, and we think about it, we all stay in our own little silos. So how are we supposed to even really encounter somebody unless we're willing?
That's a city thinking, coastal city thinking, because you don't have that issue in the Midwest. They know.
They know we're not integrated.
Yeah.
And so in session, I remember I had a client who there was just this level of resistance. I knew it was because I was Black. So my challenge was, how do I bring it up, not making it about me? Because that's another thing people want to, I'm going to address it. I'm going to confront it. Well, that's fine. But if it's because of you and your ego, then you're harming the client, right?
Come on now.
So I've had to step back and engage, and then get to that point to say, I know this is an issue. How are you feeling about it now? But number one, the person is like, what? Because they didn't expect for me to address it.
Right.
But then when we address it, that's when a real work can happen. So then you can tell me all of your experiences. And then sometimes you got to take a deep swallow, because we're human. But I'm going to swallow it. And when I leave here, I might, pray, curse, repent, whatever I had to do. I'm going to deal with my stuff, but I'm going to come back here and we're going to have this encounter in order for you to work through the things that you have to work through. And so like, I've had that experience there professionally. I had it where I was an RA, and I remember I'm minding my own business, and I'll never forget this, that I had one of the people on my floor, like, I loved her. We hung out together. We did all of this stuff together. I had no idea that she was taught to hate Black people. Like, that is one experience in my life that I'll never forget. And that's what really let me know that you have to be willing to be the difference. Because I remember she came to me, and it showed me too, that whole light thing, that when your light really shines through, like, unless somebody is absolutely trying to stay where they are, it is going to penetrate.
Yep.
And I remember she came to my room. She might have been drunk. I don't even remember. But all I remember is that I was like, in college, cleaning your room is like a huge thing. And that's what I was actually doing at that time, minding my business. And she came in and she started telling me this whole story and apologizing. And I'm like, for what? Like, I ain't seen you a day. Like, what are we talking about?
Right.
Long story short, she started apologizing because she started telling me how she was brought up to hate Black people.
Wow.
But then she met me, and she had no choice but to interact with me, right? Because I'm her RA.
Yeah.
But then she met me and started just apologizing and saying she's sorry, and meeting me changed her whole world and all this stuff. And then I said, aha. That was like that, like, but that's when it really resonates in you that you just need to be who God created you to be. There's going to be some people that you're going to be like a repellent to, and there's the people that you're called to be the difference to, and you're going to be the difference. And so as a Black woman, I try to navigate the world like that. Now, there is a level of resistance in terms of the fact that when you have a certain posture, when you dress a certain way, when you look a certain way, you enter into these spaces. I can feel the pushback. I can feel the pushback from colleagues. I can feel the pushback from white women. I can feel the pushback from white men when I enter into these spaces. And so my job is to figure out, how am I going to navigate it? Because I don't think that I realized too that at some points I was shrinking back until basically this year, well, not this year, but 2020. That was like a light bulb to me in a lot of ways, because here I am thinking, I got this. I've been navigating this life forever, and I have, but I didn't realize that you pick up residue in life. You that's why we got to continue to do like the work, because you can be perfectly fine. You pick up residue, don't know what's on the bottom of your shoe. And so basically I'm picking up all of these messages and all of this data and not realizing that there are times that I'm shrinking back to make other people feel comfortable. And I think that there's a way that you have to communicate in these environments, but you also have to do it again as your authentic self. And I can't help that my presence offends you, but I am here to work with you, communicate with you, and to build with you. That's something you're going to have to deal with. I'm not going to be overtly proud or arrogant or any of those things, but I'm going to be intelligent. I am going to talk on something that I have the wisdom to provide the insight with. I'm not going to not say it because you feel a certain type of way. And I think that's important for Black women to really realize entering into spaces. I also wrote a paper about why the conversations between Black women and white women are so difficult. And one of the things has to do with how we're raised. Like, me and my friend Sarah has talked about that as well. Like, Black women are meant, and we have no choice but to be independent, to be strong. And a lot of times our independence or directness is seen as being aggressive. I'll sway.
Right.
It's not aggressive because you can't deal with it. Of course, I believe, again, that we need to communicate a certain way, but we need to do that with everybody. Like, it's just not, just one group of people. And so the communication has been difficult. I've had a lot of things that at the time I'm just trying to do my job. So it didn't always click to me. And then sometimes I would say like, nah, she got a problem with me because, then you lose it. Nah, she got a problem with me because I'm Black. I don't know what to say, but that's not what's really happening here. Don't know how to help her right now. Got to do my job. Right now, I don't have the grace to handle it. I'll pray, come back, super Christian, handle it appropriately. Right now, bye. Get out my face. So I really had to realize that, because also too, like when I speak, it has a level of authority behind it. It has a level of weight. And so, you know, that is difficult for people as well. But again, like it really has to do with my heart, which is pure and loving and all those things. And if you're challenged by the way that God has kind of designed me to present some of these things to you, is that my problem or your problem? And sometimes it might be my problem. Right. And when it is, I'll make an adjustment. But when it's yours, my expectation is that you're willing to do the same thing. And so that's really my encouragement in terms of that authenticity for like young Black women, is not to shrink Black. Like to be the most authentic version of yourself, and to know though that you don't have to be rude. You don't have to be aggressive. You don't have to be the narrative that everybody's trying to create, because that's what it said that we are. Because we're so much more poised and dignified than this stereotypical view that is presented in media of who we are. And so it's time for us to really get back to that. It's time for us to kind of get back to like that Claire Huxtable, right? Yeah. That lady that is about her business, that like those are really
multifaceted.
Exactly. And so that is like my encouragement. That conversation probably could be a whole podcast about navigating the world, but
so I ask everybody, and you alluded to it. We met because of 2020. You definitely have been amazing in my life, but
thanks.
How was your 2020?
2020 was rough. For a lot of reasons, but then it also was a blessing. Like it was rough just because, you know, I relocated right before 2020. And that was a God thing, because I would still be in my city, in my state. That's another podcast. So to relocate and to be in a position that you're not at home in the midst of all of these things happening. Wow. And you're in a major transition already. So to be in a major transition and to have everything that you may have seen coming, but you was hoping it wasn't going to. That's a different podcast.
Yeah, that's the
that's a different one. And you know, and trying to just be okay was super challenging. I had to question and reevaluate a lot of my relationships and figure out how I'm going to navigate them. Because one of the things that was very evident to me based on who God created me to be, like if you look at it, like my I guess Facebook, because that's kind of like, Facebook is more like family oriented, I would say. So I have like most of like, you know, those type of people. My pages is very diverse. I know very diverse groups of people. Why is that an important statement about 2020 is that I had to reevaluate some of those relationships. Because it's not, this isn't a silent moment anymore. Like I get that you may not be vocal, but this is not a moment that you can remain silent. This is a moment
that quote.
You're going to have to put on your big girl panties or your drawers and get moving. Like you're going to have to decide.
Speak or move.
Exactly. And what I was challenged with is I had a lot of friends that treated me like a side chick or a one night stand. So you're sending me messages privately asking me, am I okay? Saying, oh, I'm so sad about what's happening, but your page isn't a reflection of it, or you're not speaking out on it, or I don't know what to do. Well, I'm telling you what you can do, and you're choosing not to do that because you don't want that smoke. But that's my life. I deal with that smoke when I walk outside the door.
Right.
You know what I mean? I deal with the heat. The heat is on when I choose to leave my house and to experience the world. And so I think that was like the part that was super challenging for me is how am I going to navigate those relationships? And there was a couple people that I did cut the cord from. And there was a couple people that I just held on to and just was like, we cool. We just have a little bit of a barrier in between us, you know? And then there's some people that I was like, oh, you a writer.
Stop there.
And I'm not looking for people to denounce their family or anything like that. But I'm looking for them to say right is right and wrong is wrong. And if they didn't understand, I'm expecting them to come to me to say, what does this mean? Mm-hmm. So I really respect people more that was willing to say, I don't get it and I don't understand it and wanted to have that conversation, because I'm the individual that's willing to have the conversation, because I feel like they're necessary for change to actually happen.
Yeah, many don't.
Exactly. So that was an interesting, very interesting place to kind of navigate. And then, also too, with the pandemic, being in any type of frontline type of situation, like I know even yourself, you had to go to work, and that was hard.
Yeah.
That I don't think that people really gather while we're fighting about whether you should wear a mask or not, or whether we should be closed or not. The weight of the responsibility for anybody that really had to be in work while everybody else was home, and the decisions that you make for yourself, your family, like even the decisions that your job had to make in terms of how do we deal with this, productivity wise, staff wise. It was just, I was exhausted for months and months on end. And so self-care and stuff was just really important. I had family members pass away. So 2020 had a lot going on. But then it was a lot of blessings though. Like, I entered in spaces I wasn't in before. I met new people. I started to work on projects. I feel like at the end of the day, one of the things that I had sent to my mentoring group, it was that 2020 was a year of great reward. Like that's literally what I heard the Lord say before we entered into 2021, is that 2020 was a year of great reward. And that might seem so like false.
I can't say that for my life just because, and I'm sure you know why.
Yeah.
I definitely can. I get what you're saying.
Yeah. And it wasn't. It wasn't necessarily the rewards that we're used to. Like, it wasn't of like maybe like the accolades or, some people may have had, financially their situations changed. And, obviously we saw so much devastation in the world and stuff. But it was really one of those places that you understood what was valuable. You understood the things that you had to cut away. There were a lot of, definitely a lot of opportunities that people had that they wouldn't have had if we weren't here, because they had to shift, they had to regroup, they had to look at situations differently. There were a lot of relationships that were cultivated and built in 2020. So there was a lot of reward in the middle of a storm. There was a lot of things that were added. And so instead of just looking at all of the possible devastation of the year, I just choose to look for the reward that was in it. So
it was. So we getting ready to close out because I don't want to keep you too much longer. I feel like we could probably do a day 24-hour podcast. Like this.
Maybe we could. I agree. I told you I'm long-winded.
I am myself too. So the last two things I ask is what's one thing you would tell a stranger to encourage them?
To have hope.
Okay.
Because there's sometimes that we can't see past our situation, and I get it. I've been there. I think we've all been there. There are some times that we feel like we don't know how we're going to make it, and I get it. But when we hope for and have expectation that there's greater, when we meditate on possibility, and when we put our mind and our focus on moving forward in the future, and seeing the beauty in the ashes and things like that, those are the things that will get us on the other side of anything, because we're in the pandemic for 2021. Let's be real. And so if you don't have something to hope for, if you don't see promise at the end of this, it's going to be another very hard and challenging year. There's so many major transitions going on, and it's easy just look at the world and look at everything that's wrong with it, instead of having hope for the future and, seeing beauty in situations. And I know that sounds very like rainbow bright Care Bear.
It don't.
But it's really going to be the thing that's going to get us on the other side of this. Even in the midst of hard things, I'm not saying that we're, going to 5 years down the line that, we're going to be holding hands singing Que Sera, Sera. But it is being able to see that, that the glass doesn't always have to be half empty.
Yeah.
That's going to be what allows you to celebrate your life and to find joy in the midst and peace in the midst of everything that you encounter, because you can be in desolate situations and still have joy. You can still have peace, and everybody else is looking at you like, why is that possible?
Facts.
So.
And then one thing you would tell a friend to encourage them.
Yeah, be big.
Ooh.
Like, be big. Like, don't shrink back. Be the most like bold, big, authentic version of yourself. This is not the moment to shrink back.
Come on.
I know that there's all these things that are happening. There's all these things that are going on in the world. You're looking at whether or not there are possibilities, things that you thought may have been different, or you were hoping that were going to be different and they're not. But be big. Don't let anybody tell you that you can't. That take can't out of your vocabulary. For what you're saying to yourself, I don't even think that half of the time we're always talking about haters in the world. It ain't haters in the world. It's this one. It's what's in here, your brain. So be big. When you think that I can't do it, then you know that you actually can. So it's not that I can't, it's how. What do you need to do to get on the other side? So be big. Don't.
You was talking to me for that one. That came directly right to my spirit.
Well, praise God.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Terra. This was amazing. This is amazing. It's always amazing. But I'm excited. I can't wait for this to come out because it's gonna be powerful.
Oh, well, thanks. I'm excited for it to come out. Thank you for having me and all of those things. And
So last thing is let the people know where they can find you, your socials and all of that good stuff.
Yeah, so you can find me on, I'll just give you my Instagram. And my Instagram is Terra Speaks. And you can find me there. You can DM me there. You can also email me at terraspeaks.com. I do mentoring. I'm coaching. I do all of those things to help you step into the brilliance of who you are.
It's amazing work, people. It's amazing work. Trust me.
Yeah. So, and I really believe that if you're willing to put in the work, that you will definitely see the results. And it just so happens that I am willing to put in the work with you. So you're not alone.
So I am part of those results.
Yay.
Stop, man. Alrighty. So with that being said, have an awesome weekend and till next time.
All right. Thank you. You too. Bye. Bye.